All right, all of you, for this group therapy session, your session is over. The next group is coming in right after you. And see the receptionist on the way out. Okay, schedule your next appointment. All right, so Afterburn. So this is where we get any sense that whatever I said made any sense to everybody or not. You can ask questions, make comments. And so if you're here, Steve will come around with the mic. If you're on live stream, I got Kurt and Rob manning the live stream desk, and they'll kind of make note of your comments or questions. Please keep them to today's teaching as best you can, and we'll try to address them. If they give you a teaching to go to, please accept that as the answer that you need. If you ask me the question, I probably will do the same thing. I may point you towards a teaching. Did that last night in the Zone 3 meeting. There was someone asked the question that the Millennium and Kingdom teaching would have answered, and I said, well, go listen to the teaching. Now, of course, if you listen to any teaching we recommend to you and it still doesn't seem to answer your question, you're welcome to contact us additionally, and we'll try to, answer it more, whatever issue you're still struggling with. All right, so Afterburn, we're going to begin with Rabbi Tom.
All right, thank you. May I go a few verses down in chapter 5?
Sure.
Okay. In verse 14, this is why he says, "Wake up, you who sleep," and there's a cross-reference to Yeshayahu 26:19, "and arise from the dead, and Messiah will shine on you." Could you shed a little light on that?
Yeah, next week.
Thank you. Okay, that answers my
Actually,
question.
that may be ambitious, as that's 14 verses ahead. It may be 2 weeks. No, okay. No, we'll cover that when we get there. But in the context of what we're talking about, look, what does wake up mean? What does wake up mean? Right, it has to do with your awareness. In other words, pay more attention. You're awake, but you're really not paying attention. Okay? Things are happening around you that you're just oblivious to. He's saying, wake up to reality, to what's really going on. And then when he talks about arise from the dead, well, if you're walking in a way that's not his way, you're basically the walking dead because you're not headed towards life. So he's saying, wake up, you who are asleep, and basically we're sleepwalking. By sleep meaning you're just not wanting to accept the realities that are going to get you to life. Okay? What makes us sleep? Well, we get tired, we sleep. We get really comfortable, we may fall asleep. Wow, when I worked in Wall Street, they had these conference rooms that we used to have our meetings in, but they were really meant for like governors and other people to be coming and all these kind of things to sit in these conference rooms. And these chairs were so comfortable. I fell asleep every meeting and I got rode up every time. I was like, would you put us in these chairs? What do you expect? Temperature's too hot, chair's too comfortable. But that's how we fall asleep, right? You get comfortable. Okay? And so we'll talk about that more when we get to it, but thank you. But it is connected to what we talked about today, no doubt. Okay? Okay, Ashley?
Thank you. It's a blessing to be able to be here today. I was able to sneak away, and it's funny, if I may make a comment, it's funny I snuck away on this teaching, and you know what I'm talking about on this one.
Okay, but hold on. Let me just say this. Okay.
Don't bring the blue out in me.
No.
Okay.
No. But I am going to correct you. Stop apologizing for Agnes.
I want to say sorry to that, but I won't.
Okay, look. If you have a handicapped member of your family, whether it's physical or not physical, whatever it is, stop apologizing. They're handicapped. They have, and we all know it. In the case with your daughter, we all can see it. We know. Stop apologizing. She is who she is. We all know it. Nobody's gonna. If you're bothered by it, that's your problem, not hers. Okay? All right? And so I want you to stop apologizing.
If I may, I never, and it's going to take me a long time to get used to this, because I thought I knew what love was when I was a kid. I thought I knew what love was when I married my husband. This place is teaching me love, for goodness sakes.
Amen.
So we never had the acceptance, and I said that when we were here at Sukkot, we never had the acceptance, not even 1% of the fraction of what we got here. This is my family.
Amen.
My family. I'm not a Deroshe, I'm not a Condon, I'm not nothing. I'm a child of Yahweh. This is where I belong. This
Amen.
is my family.
Amen. Good.
What I wanted to say, is something you brought up, or you were talking, and it kind of sparked a thing in me, is I didn't think I had a judging problem until I got here, until Sukkot. And I'm like, I don't judge. And now I'm wearing these TCs and things like that, and I'm walking around, and I judge. I shouldn't be the one to judge at all, because I'm the mom. I have a handicap myself. I'm deaf. I don't know if you guys know that. I only have 7% of my hearing. My daughter's disabled. My husband's a Iraq combat veteran. He's got disabilities. And it's like, I don't judge. I'm the last person to judge. And I get here, and I'm like, wait a minute. I'm seeing in my head, and I'm hearing myself think going, don't do that. Don't do that. You shouldn't do that. You shouldn't do that. You shouldn't say that to people. You shouldn't say that to me. And I'm like, wait a minute, where's this coming from? And then when I was sitting here, you answered a question for me I've been wondering for a while. It's because, and I'll just read it here. Judging is not for us because we are not privileged to the whole story. I realized that when I judged something or someone, it was because something in myself I saw I didn't like, and it was bringing it out. So I just wanted to say thank you for doing that for me. And it's, like I said, it's funny. The one day I was able to sneak away from a katane for Agnes, and I hear this.
Awesome.
So
Perfect
thank
timing.
you.
Okay. And one more thing. The answer to your question is like, well, why? What happened when you realized you were judging? Is because you started to wake up. Like Rabbi Tom brought up the verse. You're becoming aware. Okay, you're waking up. That's what this ministry is, a large part of what it's about, is helping people to wake up. Wake up to the realities that Yahweh has put. Not the realities of the delusional world we're living in, but the realities that are real. Okay? And having someone tell you, you're judging. Almost all of us have this problem at some point, almost every day. We tend to do these things. And the more you're starting to hear your own voice in your head and recognize it, you're waking up. Okay? Amen. Okay. All right, Mr. Rocky, do you want to give us a list of the people you're hoping are not going to make? No, I'm kidding.
Thank you, Rabbi. I could give you. 'Cause, honestly, I came into my life and realized that I couldn't stand people. I really couldn't. And the person I hated and couldn't stand the most was me. That's what I really, that's tough. It's tough, And I know why I'm here. I know why I'm here, because I'm not all there. Really, I'm not. And I've looked and I've searched, for people that could help me. And I paid a lot of money, and some were idiots. They were just idiots. And some just kept you sick, so they kept making money. It's tough. But, you confirm that. I've been wanting to say that, that I'm here because I'm not all there. But, and I used to be ashamed of it, but I'm not. What is ashamed of is I have ignored the issues I've had in life. And I knew that I wanted to change, and I just ignored it, And I have so much I could say, but I think I'm just gonna. That's enough for right now.
No, I appreciate it, and it's very powerful because that's part of the problem we have, is that even when we start off in our ignorance, like Ashley was saying, and then now she's becoming aware of something, but then you can run into the challenge that just when you become aware of it, you can ignore it. Okay, so it's not enough that it becomes something you're aware of. You could choose to just say, and just ignore it. And that's really where you get from bad to worse, because now you're blocking the progress. Don't be so reluctant or afraid to see just how imperfect you are. But also don't wallow in some sort of depressive state because you recognize just how imperfect you are. Because this is the place, the launching point for you. But you can't really launch properly if you think you're way up here when you're really down here. You have to start where you are, not where you think you are, or you want others to think you are. So embrace those realities without spiraling into an abyss because you realize just how flawed you are. Because he knew that's where you were when he did this, when he called you, when he opened your mind to begin this process. But you have to also just not be afraid, though. Some of us have been so protective of our image to ourselves, to other people, about, being a certain way, that it becomes really hard. Not only if someone, that's why we blow up when people want to give us some constructive criticism, because we don't want to believe that it's true. But then he'll show it to you, and now you've got another challenge because he's showing it to you. And are you willing to accept that it is true? It doesn't have to stay true. That's the whole point, right? So you fix it. But you have to start off recognizing, look, I've never been to an AA meeting, but I've seen them on TV and I've seen other things. And what's it start out with? You have to say, I am whatever the handicap is. You have to actually admit to yourself and others that you have a problem. And that, not just like you walk around in public. I mean, that was amongst other people with the same problem. But the ability to own the problem, say, I'm not perfect. And it's okay for me to realize that so I can start fixing it. Because we're striving towards perfection. But if you already think you're, let's say perfection was 100, and you're thinking that you're already at 75 when you're really at 45, you're not going to make the right progress because you're really not where you think you are. And so that open reality, that opening of your mind to truth and reality about not just the word, I want truth and he's going to give you truth in areas you didn't want it. You think you just want this truth. Okay, the book, scripture truth. Yeah, and that's good. You should want that. But he's going to show you three things that you really need to see for truth. He's going to show you him, because you didn't have the truth about him. He's going to show you you. You really don't want to look at that. And he's going to show you everybody else and how you're supposed to relate to that. Okay? You want the truth? The truth is going to be hard. It's going to be like in the movie. I don't know. Can you handle the truth? You can't handle the truth. A lot of us can't. Oh, we can handle the truth that Saturday's the Sabbath, not Sunday, and Christmas and Easter aren't appropriate. We have feast days that are appropriate, and don't eat those foods and eat these foods, whatever. Well, what about the truth that's harder? I mean, the mechanics, I tell you this all the time, are not hard to do. But seeing ourselves in a real way, without fear, with being okay with that so you can start there and work, that's a whole different place. Who's next? Okay, Deirdre?
Thank you, Rabbi. Usually, Yahweh will teach me through nature, and then you'll say something in the sermon and I'll have it come back to my mind. But today he used you to teach me something about nature. When you were talking about how everyone has strengths and weaknesses, there's something that came to my mind, something that a show my daughter nature shows, and there's something that they said in the nature show, it's for every creature power, there's a creature weakness. You see hummingbirds, right. They use so much energy, and they are the fastest flyers on the earth, but they have to fuel up every 10 minutes. You see giraffes that are so tall, but they have to bend down to drink, and so they're susceptible to attack. You see cheetahs that can run 70 miles an hour, but they can only go so long running that speed. And Yahweh created it to be that way. So if we have these strengths and these weaknesses, it's okay, because he's allowed us to have that. It doesn't matter if it's physical, mental, emotional. He's allowed us to have that. And the only difference between us and the creatures is they just accept it. It's just part of what they know. They don't know anything different. It's just they exist. We have the mental difference, and we can make choices. So, what did I write down? Let me check. We have the mental, capability to either say, I'm going to deal with this, or I'm going to let it ruin my life. And the beautiful thing is, if we're really trying to do and be who Yahweh created us to be, He's going to lead us to people like you who can help us figure out how to deal with that if we can't do it ourselves.
Amen. I mean, look, let's take that whole thing, and the difference is, and I like the way you worded it, but I'm just kind of repackage it a little bit. Okay, the giraffe has its situation. We'll just use the giraffe, right? So it can get the leaves that are higher up that other animals aren't messing with or anything else, but it has to bend down to get the water. Okay. As a human being, if we recognize we had a handicap, we would find a way to bring the water up to us. In other words, we can make an adjustment once we recognize there's an issue. That's what makes us different. Okay? We can now start to make an adjustment. We can do things differently. We can make different decisions and be creative in how we can have workarounds for our handicaps. All right? And that's the key. That's what the creatures don't do. The creatures just have to exist with their out of balance. Their strengths and their weaknesses are what they are, and they're never going to change. We can recognize them. We can even strengthen our weaknesses, overcome or work around them, and continue to strengthen our strengths. Because we have an awareness and an intellect that allows us to do things that they can't do. Okay, that they were not created to do. Excellent. Okay, who's next? Okay, Janet, go first.
Thank you, Rabbi. Rabbi, oh my goodness, this was so awesome what you just gave us. I mean, with 2 verses, that was amazing, really. And I have so much. I wish I could talk to you for hours because this was so good. But when you were talking about, noticing the handicaps of other people, when Mateo was 1, we went to Philadelphia to take him to a place called the Institute for Achievement of High Potential, something like that. And they would work with different kids with disabilities. And one of the things that we learned from the day 1 was that pretty much every single child was in the spectrum. Like there were some who were really high achieving, but they still had something. And then you had the very low, functioning kids. So that really resonates with me, the fact that we are all in the same boat, right? We're all dealing with that, and that's really cool. I had a question about when you were talking about intolerance. I have 2 questions. The first question is intolerance. When you're saying that when the other person does something that bothers us at a high level, I feel like we're putting ourselves higher than that person. So I wanted to ask you if intolerance is connected to pride.
Oh, I'm sure. That's a good connection right there. If you're looking at things from, let's use like a kingdom sort of model. So I'm the king. I won't tolerate those things because that's what you're doing. You're putting yourself in a high level of authority saying that's not acceptable in my space. That's not acceptable doing to me. So there is maybe some of that pride in there as well, okay? But also, there's things that are not so much directed in that way, like dealing with Mateo. Mateo has handicaps, but he's not doing anything necessarily. He's not a very challenging kid that way from what I've seen. The kid is just pure love, but, he's just pure love. But dealing with some of the things that are challenging for him, I would have to tolerate that it might inconvenience me, or there may be things where, he got so excited about Zone 3. I give Olivier credit for while he was trying to do some things in the kitchen there last night after we're eating the food from Oneg, Mateo was on his back jumping up and down for about 5 minutes, which is a long time to have a kid on your back jumping up and down. And he just was laughing and tolerating it and being great with it. But other people may not have been that way. So tolerating isn't always a pride thing. Okay, it's recognizing that I'll be okay with any inconvenience, okay, or irritation that may be caused by the handicap. All right? So it could go in both ways. All right? Because somebody would have been like, make him stop. That's so irritating. Okay? Well, now, I guess it's a little pride thing because you're saying, it bothers me. See, it's not so much pride. Let's just call it, because pride is a part of it. Let's just call it, you got back into self. Now, all of a sudden, it's about you. Now, Olivier, all he could think was, he's so excited about Zone 3. He just can't stop jumping up and down, and he's laughing, and his, okay? He loves the Zoom sessions. So great. And so his focus was on Mateo instead of on himself. All right? Okay.
I have one more question. So when you were talking about being imitators of Elohim, you were wonderfully saying, keep forgiving and be compassionate and all that. At some point, you started talking about be about giving, because our Yeshua, he gave, his place where he was to come, like in the flesh, like you always explain us. But can you elaborate a little bit on what does that, like, can you give us examples about what does that really mean to give ourselves for others? Please.
Well, I think I've given a lot of examples. It's just basically saying that putting whatever I want to do right now, or whatever I want right now, or whatever is my, priority, etc. But then something like Olivier was doing something, you could have said to Mateo, look, I'm doing this thing instead of letting him do his thing. Okay? Or what if he needed him to go off and do something? So, well, I need to stop what I'm doing and go over there. By the way, let's take the imitate thing and realize that when you watch anybody dealing with someone that, at least to most people's observation, would be challenging, which could be an emotional thing or a physical thing or whatever it is, but you're watching somebody deal with a challenging, first thing you should be asking yourself is, how would I handle that? And then watch them. Now, I was able to give you this piece because I paid attention and watched how he handled that last night. Other people were probably thinking, if that were me, I'd have been, done after the first 15 seconds. But I just watched to see how he was handling it. Because you can learn from people. And not only did he tolerate it, he was laughing with them and having a good time. He thought it was fun and funny too. He enjoyed it. And so, now I could have watched him, lash out and be intolerant and scold his child and everything else, and I could have learned a different lesson from that. Because I've seen parents with handicapped children do that as well. Okay? So, watch how people handle a spouse. Okay, you're hanging out with other couples, you're hanging out with other adults, and a spouse acts in a way that clearly is part of his handicap in some way, and watch how the other spouse responds to it. Oh, well, we're going to get into something. Oh, here we go. Okay, you ready for it? All right. All of you who are married have to stop getting angry with your spouses when you own the embarrassment that they got or should have gotten from their handicapped behavior. Because you think it reflects on you.
Can you say that again?
Yeah, I will say it again. Okay? If I act the fool, my wife will likely, as a lot of you would, take it that I'm embarrassing her too in public, etc. Don't own that. Own that my husband was struggling at that moment and his handicap got the better of him and this is what he did. And you should be protective of that person. So if anybody starts saying anything, say, hey, that's my husband. He was having a moment where he was struggling with something. Hey, you need to just, be okay. You understand what I'm saying? Instead of you bandwagoning and getting, and then going out and lashing out at your spouse because they, in their handicap, embarrassed you. Now you're back in yourself. All right? Same thing with your children. Okay? You get home, smack. You embarrassed me again in front of, we were at, every time I take you, blah, blah, you embarrass me. No, they're embarrassing themselves if they're embarrassing anybody. And it's their handicap or whatever they're struggling with because they haven't grown in that area yet that caused them to behave in that way. And they're yours. Be protective of what's yours. But I hate when he does that. I hate when she does that. Well, that's something you need to pray about and you need to overcome. Why do you hate their handicap? But every time we go out or every time we're at a family thing, they embarrass me. No, they're embarrassing themselves, and you're owning something you don't need to own. Okay? You need to still be able to confidently stand up and look in anybody's face and say, I know that was what it was, but he's mine. Okay? Or, but she's mine. And so none of you are allowed to say anything about that. All right? Be protective. That person's yours. All right? And by the way, you do your own stuff just differently. All right? Okay, we're going to meddle some more. I want you to think about how many times, this often happens, wives do this and the husbands respond. So it can go the other way, but more often or not it's this way. How many times does the husband do something and make a big scene and you have no memory of the button you pushed? All you remember is that they made the big scene. Okay? Because a person will say, oh, but you did this and embarrassed me. I'm like, but you forced the situation by what you did in front of everybody. Now, that still doesn't mean that either one is excusable in that way, but just realize whoever you are, it could be the man or the woman, but often it's the wife to the husband. Don't forget that something happened to cause the thing. It didn't just happen. Okay? Now, it may have had nothing to do with you. It may have been something else, but something triggered. Things don't just trigger themselves. Okay? If you're handicapped, things will trigger a reaction. Certain types of lights can cause you to have an epileptic reaction. So, things trigger a reaction. So you might want to be asking yourself, if your husband is behaving in a way or whatever's happening or your child is behaving, just figure out what triggered it. If it's a spouse, it was probably you. Okay? And so don't be so upset with them. Think, oh, I did that, didn't I? Now, you're not happy with the way they reacted, but you pushed the button. And you got to own that. That doesn't mean that excuses their behavior, but you still got to own yours. You don't want them to trigger, don't push the button. Well, they shouldn't have a button, but they do. That's the handicap. Live in reality. Okay? Keep your hands away from the buttons. You're like those little kids that they get near anything, like on your desk, and they see the computer, and they want to just touch everything. You know the buttons, don't touch the button. It's like Rocket talking to Groot. Don't touch the button. Some of you are thinking, why do you know what was in that movie? I do. All right? Don't touch the button. But that's what you guys do. You touch the button. Okay? So children are doing whatever they're doing. Why don't you pause and figure out, I wonder what triggered that? Instead of just only focusing on the response to the trigger. And if you're involved, how about a little bit of, honesty and looking at yourself and going, ooh, I did that, didn't I? I should have known that was the response that was coming. I pushed that button. Amen? All right, next. Ken?
Thank you, Rabbi. It's not coincidence because it was all in God's plan, but I can't believe that I've heard today what I did, because this just a few days ago, I had this hyper awareness of a situation, and in that situation, by thinking through it, came to the solution and realized, maybe sort of like what Rocky said, I've discovered something in my past that was corrected, and it was just like this hyper awareness of, thank you, Yah, thank you, and I can deal with that. And after this moment, there were all sorts of things happening, but one of the verses that kept coming to my mind was Luke 9:62, where anyone who puts their hand on the plow and looks back is not fit for the kingdom of God. And it was so appropriate because in the past I'd always, look back at this problem, or I've used that as an excuse. Well, it's because of that. That was solved. I don't look back anymore. And if I can, I'll put that experience in front, and I'm going to keep going for for the goal.
Amen. All right, but did you hear what he said? It started off with he didn't ignore, but paid attention to what was brought to his awareness. Okay? All right. Okay, who's next? Okay, Chris?
When you said that you wish you had a name for the handicap where you're not trusting, I remember from my AP psychology class like 5 years ago. It really stuck to me, and I liked that class. The idea of an attachment disorder. So it says 4 styles of attachment have been identified in adults. Secure, which is what you're supposed to have, but there's also anxious, preoccupied, dismissive, avoidant, and fearful, avoidant. And so I thought that just was what I thought of when you talked about that, because there's a lot of disorders like that tie into these mental and emotional problems.
Sure.
So
Send me a link to that. Send me so where that is. I'd like to read the way it describes each of those. Okay. Excellent. Thank you. Betty?
Thank you, Rabbi. I am a blue. Boy, am I blue. And one of the things for my blue is when I have my day planned and Yah throws a monkey wrench in it, and I do not like that.
I've never seen a blue have a problem with that before.
Well, when April got hurt...
In the last few minutes, that is.
When April got hurt and Addie had to come live with us for my blue, that was a huge upheaval.
Sure.
And one of the things I learned, I think what Yahweh tried to teach me was, okay, we don't know how long this is going to be. You can either whine and cry and complain and make everybody in the house miserable, or figure out a way to deal with it. And in doing so, I am really enjoying having her live with us. It's not easy. You know her, she's 8, she going on 30, she tells you what she thinks, whether you want it or not, but I am really, really enjoying taking care of her. And so I know that's what Yah wanted me to learn, and so now I'm looking for the next phase to see what he has next for me, and I hope it's nothing like this.
Okay, amen. All right, look. Let's take this situation she's talking about and let's extrapolate it out for everybody. This child is challenging at times and hard to love at times, but so are you. And so you want to think about those that are hard to kind of connect with and to love are the ones that need it the most, and you need to figure out how to get there. Okay? And it's very important. And there are those that have made that effort that really enjoy her. Okay? They really do. But you have to make the effort to figure them out, to understand them. But they're hard. But you know what? If they're hard to love, that means they're probably not getting a whole lot of it, because people will then tend to avoid. Because it's hard. So if it's hard, I'm going to avoid it, because who wants to make that kind of effort? But if you could get through, it's going to pour out abundance because they need it so badly. Okay? And so that's really an important piece of that as well. So thank you for pointing that out. And as far as having your tasks and your list and things getting a monkey wrench in them, I love to tell the story about how my wife and I had a day where I'm all red, she's blue. And we went out and got a ton of things done. I thought it was great. We accomplished a lot of stuff. We came home. She was all mad. I said, "What are you mad about?" She goes, "We didn't do a thing on my list." No. She said, "We didn't get anything done." I go, "We just did 67 things." She goes, "Yeah, but none of them were on my list." All you blues know what I'm talking about, okay? But she wasn't mad at me. She just seemed off. I said, "What's the matter?" She goes, "We didn't get anything done." So she wasn't like mad, but she looked like she was off. I was like, "What?" And so you guys need to understand, the person who you're constantly making upset the most is you. You guys have a hard time being in shalom because everything bothers you. because you're so connected to everything, all right? And that's where those of us who, like me, look at you and say, how do I help you stop doing that so you can actually be happy more of the time? Not that you're never happy, but just because these things are so disturbing to your sense of right and wrong and order and everything else that has to get going, which is a great thing to have if it's in balance, okay? Because without you blues, nothing would get done. I'm serious. If you want stuff done, they're the ones who are really getting everything done, okay? Okay, reds want it all done, but they're not going to do it. We're going to find people to do it, okay? This has to get done. Where's a blue? I got a task for you. Now, as a red, I know I may be challenged with the blue doing it their way, not my way. But if you're pure enough red, as long as it gets done, that's all that matters. If you're purple, you'll argue and fight over how it gets done, okay? Okay, but as long as it gets done, I'm pretty good with it, okay? I wanted it done, and it's done. Okay, mission accomplished. All right, anyway, but this is part of understanding how these things can be challenging for us, right? Okay, anybody else? Rebbitzin. We're going to hear from the First Lady Queen of the Blues.
It's true, it's true. Okay.
Listen, if I'm going to represent reds, she can certainly represent the blues.
Thank you. Okay, so this is my thing. I know we're talking about loving your neighbor, and the hard thing for me as your wife is I see things more than the average.
Why are you all laughing already? She didn't give the details yet. The hard thing for me is your wife. Yeah, I can imagine what you got to deal with being married to him. All this chuckling going on.
Okay, no. So blues are very loyal, okay, right? So you're talking about loving people, and that's great, but sometimes I feel like as your wife, I'm your protector. And when I see people being rebellious or not loyal to you, I have a hard time loving those people. And I think about the story of Korach and his rebellion, and I think, surely there was somebody in the camp who noticed they were doing this, and nobody's talking about it to Moshe. Are they talking about it to him? And this was allowed to happen. And I feel like I'm one of those people that would try to not have that happen because I care about the body, and I don't want people to disrupt the body. So how do I deal with that when I see things and I have to keep my mouth shut, but I don't want to?
This is so weird because we've never had this conversation today. All right, so look. First of all, we have to be careful that we don't equate some of the things that look like disloyalty to being on the level of Korach. But also remember, and I've had this conversation with her many times, you know, if you can zoom out, and it's easier to do with red than any of the other colors, but if you can zoom out, you can recognize that Abba allows these things because they're used to do a certain level of culling the herd, so to speak, okay? And so some of these things are, look, Korach wasn't just Korach. When it all was played out, all those ones that were in that wrong mindset went together. The ground opened up and got them all, okay? And so there is a difference between, say, a Pinchas stepping up and putting the spear through and saying this nonsense has to stop, and those that are whispering around forming factions and having them all go at the same time, okay? There's been people that I've allowed that have been here that I knew was causing whatever they were causing, and then when they left, others left with them, and I said, that's what it was supposed to be. That's what I was allowing to play out, okay? But that doesn't make it any easier for the loyalty issues of the blue, okay? Very challenging. But that's when you have to go get your counsel where the person says, thank you, I'm aware of it. Or thank you, I wasn't aware of it, now I'm aware of it. But then you have to let them decide how to handle it. okay? Which is why, for whatever reason, an extreme red is in charge here, because that you need to have that ability to not have the emotions just go screaming out at all of that. Because sometimes there's a lot of patience necessary to let things play out. And things aren't going to be perfect while they're playing out, and maybe some adverse things happen, but sometimes there's that sense that I get that I'm supposed to let it play out. Other times, I'll step in and try to stop it where it is or whatever it is. But that's where the trust thing has to be. You have to, do you trust that person, okay? Do you trust that person? Because the blue is the side that really needs to learn submission. Because the blue needs to be able to trust somebody to make sure everything's okay. Problem is, whenever they don't feel it, they jump in and usurp and do it themselves because they have to make sure everything's okay. And so all of you who have your challenges, in submission, a lot of it comes out of the blue. A lot of it can come out of the white, which is very independent. Each color has its challenges with submission. But understand, the blues one is from trust. Okay? Can I trust that you'll do the right thing? Because I know the right thing, I'm blue. Okay? And then if I, as the head with her, don't do it the way then she's going to get all concerned, security-wise, because I'm not doing what she thinks is right, so now she's having a trust issue because she can't see that far ahead that this may play out correctly. All she knows is right now, this needs to be fixed. And so we have these challenges because now I have to accept, I shouldn't argue, fight, or just leave it alone. I should say, I know you're dealing with an emotional security issue. These people are, in your mind, clearly being disloyal in some way, causing some sort of splitting, whatever they're doing. I need to reassure her I have it under control. Of course, if I just say, hey, I've got it, don't worry about it, which is what I normally would say, that's not enough. I need to go over and give her some comfort and encouragement and say, I understand. I see what you see, but I need to let this play out. And that may or may not work either, okay? Depending on how strong the emotion is that the other person's having. But that's what we're dealing with, is a trust issue. Okay, now the question you ask, though, this is the bigger question, is how do I love those people? You have to imitate him. How does he love you? How does he love all those people too? A lot of these people are not Korachs. They're just struggling with their handicaps as they clash with my handicaps. A lot of this has to do with me and everybody else because I'm the leader of this group. And when those handicaps clash, it's problematic for both sides, for everybody involved. And then normally one or both is yakking to other people about all the things that they're not happy about with whatever's going on. And it's just not a good situation. Because we're not grown up yet, all of us, including me, to get through these things perfectly, or in whatever ways, whatever that looks like. And so, but through it all, we have to recognize, but I expect you'll be in the kingdom, so I have to figure out how to love you. It doesn't matter that you're, got me angry right now and hurt my feelings, or we're disloyal, or I can't trust you right now, whatever it is. Look, many breaches of trust have been restored into relationships, okay? Guess what? You're part of the biggest one in history, so to speak. Israel breached trust with Yahweh, and yet Yahweh's taking Israel back, okay? And so we have to deal with those balances, I mean, you can take back into whatever relationship, family members that have breached trust and all kinds of things, because I know a lot of people who I counsel have problems with siblings or children or parents or whatever because of breaches of trust, or even husbands and wives. But I'm saying, but even others, siblings, where, we had this relationship and I trusted them and they did this and they betrayed me in this way or whatever it was. And it may not be something that was breaking a commandment, but they betrayed your trust in some way and they hurt the relationship. And so now you've got all of these relationships that go in that way, and now you wonder, how can I trust them ever again? How can he trust you ever again? You've messed up. And so none of us has the perfect path to do all of that, but we have to figure it out. Oh, but, there's no but. We have to figure it out. If a person genuinely repents, then there should be a path to restoration if that's possible. Of course, it depends on what they did to you. You know, if there were abuses and it was dangerous, then the fact that they apologized doesn't mean that you want to put yourself back in that place. But you have to be able to not allow that breach of trust to cause you not to trust anybody ever again, or anybody that's similar to that situation, a brother, a sister, a parent, whatever it is, an authority figure, excuse me, whatever that may be. Is that fair? All right? So we have to figure that out, because we will all disappoint each other at some point. And some of that will be in an area that you would consider a trust area. So then what do we do? Because that's very challenging. But I trusted you. How many times have you said that in your life? Or at least thought it real loud, even if you never told the person? I trusted them, and they did this. Well, they're screwed up, so are you. I mean, you know, I bet there's a few people out there talk about you the same way. I trusted her, I trusted him. And you're not even aware you did anything, because they never said anything. But yet they, at that moment where they were, received it that way. And then you don't understand why they're avoiding you now, and why they're not talking to you. And they could be about something that didn't even actually happen, but that's just the way they perceived it. Or it could be something that did happen that if it was actually talked about could be fixed easily. But we have not developed that skill set to have those conversations in a right way. Instead, we just look at people as, you know, either toxic or dangerous, or, you know, I don't trust them or whatever, and then we just start putting up all these barriers. Here's the ironic part of this. The huge irony with this is that almost all of the people that tend to have that kind of reaction the strongest are overly connected in the first place. You laugh, but it's true. Because you wouldn't feel that way if you weren't overly connected to people in the first place, because then you take it so strongly. By overly connected, I mean that you think everything they do affects you, and that everything they do is somehow you should have a say in it. And it's an overly connected thing. But then when it goes badly, you want to throw up the boundaries and throw everybody away. So the people that do that, instead of putting up appropriate boundaries at the right time before it goes badly, it's only in a knee-jerk reaction to it already going bad way, you know, sideways, whatever. All right? Okay, who's next? Okay, Esther?
So,
It's only 6 o'clock, by the way.
okay, let me make it quick.
I got a late start because somebody had a very long presentation that I wasn't expecting. And it was great, by the way. Well, go ahead.
A scripture popped into my mind while you were talking about our handicaps being our weakness. There are problems to fix. You know, this is our burden, you know. So then I popped into my head while you said that, like, it's our burden, like, but Galatians 6:2, and I'm never there, so I just wanted to see if this is a appropriate connection. It says, bear one another's burdens, and so complete the Torah of Messiah. And like, as a body, we're supposed to be unified, you know, and we have weaknesses, and we struggle in them, and it is our burden to bear and to fix.
Amen.
So, but as a body, like, I don't know, we should be bearing it with one another, like, and enduring, kind of, not like I guess before this teaching, I used to think bearing meant, like, give me your problem so I can fix it for you. And it was enabling bearing, and it was inappropriate, like, taking it all myself. But it's like, if I'm correct in this, like, it's bearing, like, I see your weakness. And I'm not going to let that affect me, but I'm still going to, it's the intrinsic nature of what Messiah came to fulfill, I guess, is what that.
Okay.
I don't know.
Let me give you 3 words. So that's, instead of bearing the burden, instead of thinking you have to fix it, what we're looking is to be tolerant, okay, compassionate, and to be impatient and like that, and to be accepting that they have the problem, that there's a problem. Okay? That's bearing the burden in a group dynamic. Not so much that I have to go there and you need to share with me all your burdens and I get to somehow unload them that way, but just understand you need my patience and my compassion and my acceptance that you are handicapped, that you are broken, that there are diminished capacities in some area, even though you're fabulous in others, okay? And that's everybody, so that this is not like, well, it's that person. No, it's all of us. There's no exceptions to this, okay? The only exception only walked on this earth about 2,000 years ago, and he's not sitting here right now, he's at the right hand, okay? There are no exceptions in human beings to this. We're all in the same boat. All of us are a mess, and all of us are very sound and stable, all at the same time. Some areas are great, some areas are not, okay? Okay, so how do we bear each other's burdens? Tolerance, patience, compassion, acceptance, okay? All right, Mercy?
Okay, so I have two. The first one is a comment, kind of off of what Esther was talking about. And I was sitting here kind of thinking about that a little bit. So during one of our morning meetings, one of the things that I said during that time, and I don't even know what we were talking about or meeting, I know we were meeting about, but what we were talking about, what brought this up. So one of the things that I said, and I want to see if there's a connection with this as well. So my prayer, I felt like if I look over the course of my life, things that I did in terms of church related was I found a church that I was comfortable in. Not comfortable in the sense of being able to sin and do stuff like that, but comfortable in the demographics, comfortable in where it was located, comfortable in the music or the this or the that. And one of the things that I said when I moved from Los Angeles back home was, okay, Father, once I got on this path was, all right, I want to do something different this time. I want you to place me where you want me to be. So that goes to the scripture that says that he places each person in the body the way he chooses and the way he wants to. And I had never, you read that scripture all the time and it never really dawned on me exactly what it meant. And when I came across MTOI, it wasn't what I would have chosen. It was in Tennessee and it wasn't where I'm comfortable with. And, a lot of the things weren't things that I was comfortable with. And, we had conversations about that. But one of the things that I submitted to in regards to the Father was, I said, I want you to place me where you want me to be. And I think the reason why he has that in the word is because, one, because he's the Most High Elohim, but he knows what each of us needs. And he knows, just like our regular body, what makes it healthy and what makes it live and grow and flourish and where it can be needed and where that needs this. And if you're going to be a pinky, you're going to be a great pinky because he's going to put you there because that's what the pinky needs to do and you know what to do to be the pinky. And when I'm listening to all this, it's confirmation to me, one, that I'm allowing him to do what he can see because he's, he has that bird's eye view where we don't see everything, but I'm thanking him every day that he has everything under control and he knows where each person needs to be. So my first thing is that a connection there with being able to be hypervigilant of your things, your mess, and to be able to have that rub up against someone else to help change you. So that's my first question.
Yeah, look, there's definitely a connection with all of these things that you're saying. A lot of it has to do with what you're specifically talking about as far as your reluctance. And you were, but what you didn't say that made all the difference in your decision was the thing that she decided first was that I was her anointed appointed that Abba had put in her path. So then she was counseling with me based on that relationship. And so all decisions came out of the council. Now, she still made her own decision. I didn't just tell her, well, pack up. Actually, I did tell you to just pack up and come. So, but that was after the conversations where it was clear that that's really what she wanted to do with her emotions and her, I was going to say fears or concerns, trusting that it was going to be the right decision. weren't already sort of set aside and handled, okay? And that's when I just said, it will be okay, just come, all right? And then she said, you're my anointed, appointed, I'm gonna come. And it's been great, okay? So, but then you knew you had to come to a place that wasn't necessarily what you would have picked, all right? I mean, I don't know that I would have originally decided and picked this building, which was a gym, but it's worked out great. But we couldn't figure out how to get whatever it is I ideally was looking for, and it's worked out great. But you go with what he provides, and then you follow that. But that doesn't mean that if you follow it, he may not give you a little pop quiz and have something go sideways with you and somebody in the congregation the minute you move here, and then you think, what did I do? Why am I here? Whoa, that was just a little test quiz. Why did you come? Well, because he put me here. So what are you worried about this little test quiz that you just got? A little pop quiz. Okay? What else? Do you have another one?
I do. So when I think also in conjunction with what you were talking about today, what your teaching was today, I think about myself and all the handicaps that I've had, all the brokenness that I've had, things that I have been delivered from, things that I have changed. And going through that process, one of the things that happened to me, and maybe you can talk to this point for other people, because I'm sure other people think the same thing. When you start going through these processes, you don't realize that a lot of the handicaps you take on as your own identity. So these things become who you are. All of them, good, bad, or indifferent. And when the Father starts showing you yourself and you start realizing, oh, I shouldn't be doing this, I shouldn't be doing this, oh, this is wrong, blah, 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 blah. Instead of, wallowing in sorrow because he's showing you that, because it does not feel good when he does show you. But you, at least for me, I had gotten to the point where he was stripping me of so many things that I was like, I remember I yelled out to him and I was like, well, who am I? I don't even know who I am anymore. If you're taking all these things away from me, then who am I? I don't know who to be. I don't know what my identity is anymore in anything, because it was either career or this or that or whatever. Then who am I if you take all this stuff away from me? And then you go into this place. It's not a depression or anything. It almost feels like you're wandering, like you're unsure, because you're like, well, this is who I've always thought I was. These are the things that I stood on and said, well, definitively, this is who I am. But when he starts taking those things away from you, or he starts showing you that they're not appropriate or they're not right for you, then you get to a point where you're like, well, then who am I? And who am I? It's not even who do you want me to become? It's like, well, who am I right now in this moment? So I wondered if you can talk to that. I mean, I'm progressing on in that. It's still, a little touch and go because I'm still trying to figure it out. But I know a lot of people probably have that as well.
Okay. This is why I always enjoy our conversations, because you always ask the easy questions. All right, so, which is probably why the conversations usually go at least an hour. Because easy questions only should take that long. But anyway, the thing is this. We've gone through forever, I guess you would start from the beginning, in our societies that we've come together, in cultures that have come together. We tend to find our identities in anything but just ourselves, okay? I am a rabbi. I am a carpenter. I am what do you know? You're a person who happens to do that sometimes, And so we start to identify with our careers, or we identify with, I'm a Jew, I'm a Messianic Torah Observant Israelite. Now we're identifying with a religion. But who are you? And what are you? I actually was always impressed with the oddball person. You know who I'm talking about, that was in your school, that did his own thing or her own thing, and it wasn't to set a trend for anybody else, and it wasn't necessarily lashing out. They just had their own, they just didn't care. They knew what they wanted and who they were. At least that's what it looked like to me. The person that when I went out to a club was dancing by themselves and clearly was dancing to a different song, okay? And did not care. okay? We have a real hard time, and I've talked to people about this when I've counseled, because I've had people that, a few of these happened with the ladies, where the ladies were young, got married, then something maybe happened to the spouse, got married again, and all they know is their identity in the relationship of a wife. They don't know who they are. They've never been themselves. They went almost right out of, from mama's house to marriage, and that's all they know. And I've tried to tell them, hey, slow down, spend a little bit of time figuring out who you are before you give yourself to somebody else so you know what you're giving. And we've not done that. We're too busy trying to be concerned with what others will think. So a big part of who we are is because we were pleasing others. What will these people think if I go that way? What will these people think if I go that way? This is hard. We don't realize the level of influence. What are people going to say? And that's what I was always impressed with, that person who didn't seem to care. Now, that's not necessarily impressed with everything they did in their lives, but I appreciated. And you know what? Some people laughed and mocked them and did what? They didn't care about that either. They were just happily being them. And you've got to learn that you have to be you. With all your mess and everything else, this is you. And that's where you may say to your spouse, did you marry the me you thought I could be and the me you in your mind, or did you marry me? Because this is me. And the person's like, well, if I'd have known that. But you should have. But the thing is, you also were dating a person who was trying to impress you, was worried about these things, and maybe didn't show all the aspects of themselves to you until after you got married, that kind of thing. Well, I try to tell people all the time when they're dating, be you, so that they can decide if they want to marry you. Oh, but they may not. No, you don't want to be married to anybody who doesn't really actually know you before they got married. Be yourself. Be as real as you can be. Be you. Be on your better behavior to some degree, but be you. Be yourself. Well, I don't know who I am. Well, that's because you've been so busy being influenced, as you've allowed, by everybody and anything around you. And so you don't know how to be you. This is what I think a lot of what Mercy's talking about. And then Abba took away all the things you thought defined who you were. And now you're like, okay, you just stripped that all away. Now I have to figure out what's left. Often when I deal with people, whether it's in a marriage, whether it's in their careers, whether it's in whatever part of life they're struggling with, I ask the same question. So again, if I'm talking about you, I am talking about you, because I ask this question about almost anything in life where you don't know what to do next. If the person says things like, well, this or that, I'm struggling, I say, what do you want? And they go, I don't know. I said, that's what you need to figure out. What do you want in your relationship with your children? What do you want in your marriage? What do you want in your career? What do you want with your social life? Whatever it is you're struggling with, do you even know what you want? Not what others think you should want, not what you've been told you should. What do you want? Well, and the ones I love to argue with the best, and it's not really arguing, but they throw at me things like, well, I just want what Abba wants. Smack you. Okay? Because that's basically passing the buck and not dealing with it. Okay? He knows you want what he wants. I know you want what he wants. But all of us are waiting for you to figure out what you want, including him. Okay? But that's hard to do if you have no idea what you want, because you're always busy pleasing others or concerned what others are going to think and everything else, that you don't know what you want. I've gotten to that place. There was a time, not too many years ago, and part of it is because I have a very blue wife who was always pointing it out to me, that I had to be very overly concerned with things I said and did from the microphone, because after all, what would people say? And I told her at some point, I said, I'm done apologizing for being me. I'm done pretending I'm just going to get up there and be, not that I was holding back but you're getting full, just whatever comes out of my mouth. And I'm just me, okay? And my daughter will tell you I don't cry much, okay? But I was somewhat tear-filled when I looked up to her. I said, it's not fair. I don't get to be me. I don't get to just be a normal person. Everybody wants me to be this other thing and this other thing. And I said, I'm done. If they don't like it, they can go somewhere else. Now, I'm going to be me. That's what you have to get to, though, okay? Where you're going to be you. Warts and all, everything mess. That doesn't mean I'm not working on things. This isn't like, well, that's just too bad. I am who I am. But I'm going to be who I am as I'm progressing. And I'm not going to pretend to be anything else. And I really didn't for the most part, but mostly I got grief every time I did. Because really, some of these things are things that you probably not heard other people in front of a microphone behave like that. I've said many a thing from the mic that people are like, did he just say that? And I'm not trying to, get shock value and stuff. This is the instrument he's using, okay? And the thought process and the ideas that come in my head. And look, I was planning to go, I don't know what I was planning to go. I have Ephesians 5, as all of my notes say. So I'm going to read Ephesians 5 and 6. And as I'm going through it, somehow we went into this whole relational thing that came out of this imitate thing and the idea of loving neighbor. And it's just where it went, okay? And I think it was really good, and I think hopefully everybody got some value out of it. But the thing is, it's just allowing it to be, this is the way I work. This is who he picked to do this, and this is the way I do it. All right? Okay, you can't fake real. There you go. Thank you, Rocky. But hold on. I appreciate that. But now bring this to you, though. Okay? I go back to the song by Billy Joel, The Stranger. Okay? What mask are you putting on? And are you showing people who you really are? Are you too busy pretending to be all these different things if you listen to the lyrics of the song? Okay? And so this is an important thing to do what Mercy was just talking about. You need to figure out who you are, and not only who you are, but who you want to be. Because you got to figure out first out who you are, and you know that person that you are, okay, that's real. Now, how do I transform that with all of its still wonderful, unique personality things, because you're still going to be you, and make that congruent with Yeshua? Because we're not becoming Stepford clone Yeshua-like things or whatever. You're still going to have all the unique, wonderful things that are you, but you're going to be imitating him, okay? But you got to figure out first who you are. Are you, or are you what your parents forced you to be, or your husband forced you to be, your wife forced you to be, societies in your perception forced you to be, culture forced you to be? I mean, where does that all balance out? Now, of course, you can't go and just say, I'm going to be me and break anything that's Torah, but you can do everything that is Torah in a way that's you, as long as it doesn't conflict with Torah, and have your own being yourself. So that's a journey that is going to be tough for some of us, because some of you really don't know who you are. And that was hard for her when she got there to start to sort that all out. Okay? Some of you know exactly who you are, but you've been holding it back and it's been repressed and it's not been allowed to come out. Or maybe at least you have a hint of what that would look like. But maybe some of your relationships would improve if they were more real. In other words, if you would be yourself and stop holding back. Now, don't just explode that on your spouse or your family, but let them know, look, I took what Rabbi said to heart, and I want to start transitioning a little bit more so I can just be myself. I want you to do the same thing, be yourself. But let's be patient with each other, because they may have some things that neither one of us is used to in the other person, because that's going to be a new discovery, a new journey between family members and couples. See, one of the things that I try to pride myself on is that when you hear me, I'm this way here, I'm this way when we're at the office, I'm this way in counseling. You get me, okay? You don't get somebody who's putting on a show in front of a mic. This is me wherever you find me. And if you hang out ever, you know that that's true, okay? Because I couldn't do it the other way. I'm not saying if you go back years ago, you would have seen me being different. No, I just kept getting pointed at and picked on, and then things saying, maybe you shouldn't have done that, or was that okay? But I still was being me, but then I felt bad about it. I thought, was that appropriate? And I'm just done with that, okay? All right, and I've been that way now for quite a little while, and I think I may have actually said it out loud in front of the congregation at that point when I'm just tired of apologizing for that. Now, when I apologize that the me that I am might step on your toes and offend you to other things that I don't intend to do, and I will apologize that I haven't grown enough in that area yet. That I'll own, but this is still me where I'm at the moment. The progressive me that's still growing. Okay, this is where I am in that progression from where I used to be. Okay, you can ask Uncle Bob. I was a little different before when he first met me 20 years ago. Okay? And I've grown and changed, at least in some small ways. All right? And so, that's got to be the same thing for you guys. All right. Did that answer your question, Mercy? Okay, good. Who's next? Okay, Richard?
Thank you, Rabbi. 2 verses.
Okay.
2 hours. Whatever.
All the live stream people are thinking we're never going to get to go.
Yeah. As I was listening, and when I heard Rocky talk about not liking himself, and then I heard Rebbinson's question, and all the comments and teaching around that, first I thought about 31 and 32 in verses in chapter 4. But what came to mind is the how. And I had a man in my life that you can't shoot him, so I just wanted to kneecap him because of his behavior. And they said, I can't do that. And I was like, Robinson, what do you do with this guy? And people would come to me, what do you do with this guy? And it's like, well, we can't shoot him. And first of all, I'm wondering, why do you come to me? Because I can't do anything with him either. But what I did do is when he was in the area, I started hanging out by him. And you mentioned about being phony about that. And what I realized is I could be in his face, or I could stand behind him, and when he needed something, like we would be in meetings, I would run and get him a cup of coffee. And I went from wanting to kneecap him to feeling sorry for him, realizing, like Rocky, he was a lot like me, broken. And I learned to love the man. Now, he's still as obnoxious as ever to everybody else, but I learned to love him by serving him physically, not phony. And as I did that, what was the word you used? Intolerance went away.
There you go.
I had to do the action part of it. And out of that, I didn't have Torah words then, but that's what it was. It was 31 and 32 in the previous chapter. So it's about the doing, not just, that's how we have to do, I think, community here.
Amen. Amen. Very nice. Amen. See, I guess it was See, it worked out that I didn't have it in my notes, but I went back and read 31 and 32, so because it was a good lead in to where we were going. All right. Anybody else? Steve?
All right. I had a couple things when you talked about.
I was wondering when we were going to get to you.
Well, I don't got to go first. You talked earlier about imitating him, so to me, an important point I thought was maybe more for me is we should watch for how we imitate him, because it should be what we want to do, not to get the accolades of the people around us watching us doing. And then you talked about walking in love. So we could walk and be lovable, but it shouldn't allow us to let ourselves become a doormat. And the final thing would be, because you didn't get to verse 11, even though I had some, would be...
Yeah, we'll cover that for sure.
Are we thankful for when things don't go the way we envision them to be? And that's something that I found.
Okay, these are good points. Thank you, Steve. All right. Kurt and Rob, lightning round.
All right. I'll get you some.
Okay, Rob, go.
From Shelley Bell says, question, Rabbi, how can I be loving to someone that I seem to be triggering to anger by being positive and encouraging? Am I to avoid them? I love them dearly, and I don't want to be a stumbling to them.
All right, so most of the challenge that happens that leads to questions like this, all right, is a lack of chocolate. Oh, I'm sorry, that's just my mind is realizing that I'm getting ready for chocolate. Kurt would agree. No, okay, a lot of what happens that leads to questions like this Listen, this is really important. I'm not joking this time, all right? These kind of questions happen because we are trying to guess what the other person wants or needs. Okay? Well, I think I'm being encouraging, and I'm just trying to do, but that might not be what they want. Okay, remember what I've taught you? I said it's not necessarily helpful unless the other person thinks it's helpful. Okay? So you may need to do what Richard did a little bit more. Spend time around the person and try to see what they actually want and need, and not just guess and assume, and then you wonder why it doesn't seem to work and it's not received well. If that doesn't work, try chocolate. Okay, next. I always grab a piece of chocolate when I'm done. That's why everybody's laughing here. Okay.
Okay, from Jess E. says, when you feel like you have done a lot to understand someone's quote-unquote handicap, how do you balance having any of joy in life and the burden of constantly trying to give of yourself to someone dealing with a spouse who has personality disorder and refuses to seek help?
All right, look, there's lots of different parts to this. In other words, in dealing with someone who's challenging, you don't want to, and there wasn't time to cover every piece of this. You don't want to end up being a codependent person. You don't want to be enabling and entitling and that kind of thing. If the person is just that toxic and the relationship is not going in any kind of direction that it can go, some relationships have to be ended, okay? But that's where the first and most important thing comes in. You must get counsel if you're running into those kind of challenges. I mean, I gave you just a very basic initial understanding that before you do anything else, recognize the person you're dealing with is handicapped. Have compassion and tolerance and mercy for that. And then you can see if the right way to handle them or work with them is going to be, causing a codependency or causing an enabling. That could be a problem. So we have to be very wary of that. So if you have a spouse, by the way, it's not anybody's job to convince the other person they have a handicap. You're not going to like it if I did it to you. I'm not going to like it if you tried to do it to me. Now, if that person, because of their behavior, is making a relationship with them so challenging that you're not sure that you can maintain it, you may need counsel. And if they're unwilling to counsel, you may not have a whole lot of other options. You either have to just understand that you're going to have this challenging relationship with them forever. Look, it's just like if, God forbid, my wife or I got into an accident where we were now from this that we're used to now paralyzed. I'm not going to leave her. She's not going to leave me, but there's now a permanent handicap. So your spouse may have a permanent handicap. You may or may not be able to live with that. Because by permanent meaning they're not interested in addressing it, and so I can't get fixed if they don't address it. So counsel is what you need. Next question.
From Shelley Bell says, am I supposed to show outwardly that I'm having struggles for others to see, or is it okay to keep it to myself as I'm working on me positively inwardly?
Look, you don't have to go around telling everybody your problems and your handicaps, but if you are having a challenge with a person, it's probably good to say, I think because of my handicap, that's one of the reasons why we're struggling. Because in my handicapped area, I tend to be either this, whatever it is. I lack compassion, I'm too abrupt, I'm too harsh. Whatever the negative thing is, you can then confess that, so to speak, or share that with the person you're struggling with, so they know that you struggle with it, that it is a handicap that you struggle with. That's a conversation that's okay to have, okay? I've had my conversations with my wife where I've said, I struggle with my temper and getting loud. I tend to, if a thing gets triggered, I not always, but often enough, I can go boom. That's a handicap. So I've said, look, you need to know, I struggle with this. I don't just think, hey, it's too bad on you. But it is a handicap. It's going to keep happening until I overcome it, but I am struggling. That's a conversation you can have. Say, hey, this is an area I struggle in. I'm sorry that it's causing us a struggle in our relationship right now, but you need to know I'm aware of it. I'm doing what I can to work on it, but it is a handicap that I can't control very well, okay? Does that sound good for everybody, that kind of a conversation? Okay, next.
From Madison, says, quote, as a covenanted being, it is your job to love. Can you elaborate on how this contrasts to the idea of evangelism as our job in Christianity in light of the work being done inside of us?
I don't even understand the question, okay? No, I mean, I understood the question. I don't understand the question because one has absolutely nothing to do with you and one has everything to do with you, okay? The Christianized idea of evangelism is all about everybody you're trying to reach. What I'm talking about is about you trying to reach you, okay? So there's no connection between those at all. And by the way, the difference between the two more than anything else is that none of you, for the most part, unless there's a rare other ministry person that's out there that I'm talking to, has the job to evangelize anybody. And you don't know what evangelizing is anyway, so we'd have to go back and re-explain that. So none of you have that great commission. You've not been trained for it. You've not been assigned it and sent out to do it. That's Catholic Church, mainstream Christianity doctrine, okay? Misunderstanding of Matthew 28. What you do have an obligation is to love him and to love each other, which means you got to figure out what that means and how to do it. And that means working on you, okay? We're all obligated to do that. It has nothing to do with training. It has nothing to do with discipleship. It has nothing in terms of whether or not you're required to do it. The being sent out, the way you think of evangelism, which is the wrong way to use the word, but the idea of being sent out to try to win souls and do all this other stuff, no. The disciples are told, I trained you to train other people. Go out there and find other people willing to be trained. That's what they were trained to do. Now go out and do what I trained you to do. So that's an obligation for a few, not for everybody. Okay, so hopefully that answered the question. All right, next question.
Okay, from Tyrone, it says, is it normal not to have friends? I've always had the feeling that I'm just being tolerated.
I can say with great confidence that almost, I don't see how I want to word this, an extremely small percentage of the people you know actually have a real friend. Okay? I had a conversation recently with someone about the whole idea. I said, look, you and I are not friends. I said, that doesn't mean we don't have a close relationship and we're not very friendly, but you don't understand what that definition is. Okay? Because to be a friend, the way I'm going to define it, requires an open intimacy that's through shared information and trust. Now, you and I can be acquaintances and very friendly. We can hang out, we can do things, and never really get open and honest with each other about anything. But we know that we enjoy the same kinds of things, so we hang out and do those things together, or we talk about those subjects together. We enjoy each other's company. We hang out. We get along great. We have fun. What you're talking about, I think, is the idea of someone being real with you, open with you, and you can be open with them and honest. That's a whole different level of relationship. I have one of those, okay? Now, I'm still friendly, we'll call it, with a lot of you. I like to hang out with you. We can spend time together, and that's all great. But you're not sharing with me about your life on a friend level, unless I'm the rabbi, you're coming to me that way, and I'm not sharing with you about mine, because we haven't gotten to that intimacy level that we would call a friend. Okay? Now, we could be friendly enough that if I needed you, you would show up, and if you needed me, I would show up. That's a higher level than just casual acquaintance. But when you're saying I'm lonely, I don't have any friends, what that means is you have people that you interact with, but you don't have that intimacy of trust and openness. And I venture to say that most of you don't either. Okay? And if you do, I'm sure you can count them on one or two fingers. And part of the reason is because if you had one, you probably got betrayed at some point and that blew that whole thing up. Okay? And so the person that's asking that question, don't feel bad. Just understand that you may be thinking you're supposed to have something that most people don't have at this point anyway. Okay? I spent most of my life without one. I had pockets of times when I had one. And when I say one, I mean one other than my wife, okay? That's a different relationship. That's the best friend. That's the closest thing that you have. But we're talking about people that you're not family with. Those people, you have to really come into a place, and it has to do with a level of intimacy of sharing openly information. I'm an open book to you, you're an open book to me, because I trust you and you trust me. Does that make sense? Okay? Otherwise, you just have a lot of, and it's not wrong, it's not bad, it's great. You have a lot of nice, reasonably casual, maybe reasonably close relationships with people that are friendly. You would love to spend time together, and you talk on the phone, and you text each other, and you share whatever you share with each other. You go out and eat, and you have a great time. But if it doesn't go deeper than that, you don't have the relationship of trust to go deeper than that, then you don't have that, okay? Okay, so hopefully that answered that question. Next.
From Anna Uden, says Ephesians 5:2, says, how does someone who has only known how to love codependently start to love people like Yah does? Now that I'm growing and not codependent, I'm struggling with how to love.
All right, well, you started the process, which is first to understand what codependent love looks like so that you can stop that, right? So first thing is you got to figure out where you're starting. Okay, I'm starting as a codependent person who loves it through codependency. Okay, so you learned about it, you figured that out, and then you stop doing that. And now first of all, you need to know that whatever the love is, it's going to be something not that. So that already helped you a little bit, right? You now know what it's not. And as you go forward, you learn more things that it's not. Okay? It's not enabling and entitling, which is sometimes a part of the codependency and these other things. And so we're going to understand through this teaching, hopefully, a lot more of what it actually looks like. But we're just starting to scratch the surface, 30 parts in, 31 parts in. But we are just scratching the surface of understanding. And by scratching the surface doesn't mean there's going to be a million more parts, but we're going to get deep into this to understand what does it look like to love someone, okay? Just like I just tried to explain in a way that you maybe really didn't think about what a friend really is, okay? When something really goes wrong in your life, you'll find out who at least thinks they're your friend, okay? Because they'll show up when other people don't. And they'll be there for you when other people don't. When I had that horrible thing go on about 15 whatever years ago, I found out who my friends were. Or these people that were thinking they were friends to me, okay? Because there's different levels to this. I have a lot of you in this congregation, you know that we have enough of a friendship where if you needed me, I'd be there, and if I needed you, you'd be there. Now, that doesn't mean we've had the conversations where I know anything really about your life or you about mine. We're not on that level. But I know I can count on you and you can count on me, okay? Uncle Bob, my best friend, when I got sick, okay, and I called him up and I said, I need you here. And he got his job changed and his schedule changed. He got in his car and he drove that night. And he came. There was no doubt that he was going to come, okay? And so that's when we start seeing, again, all of this, and maybe we'll try to wrap this up here a little bit. All of this is about having every aspect of your life real. Every relationship, how you understand yourself and being honest with yourself, all get real, okay? Understand that you may think, oh, I got 15 friends. Well, do you or not? Are they acquaintances? Are they friendly? Or are they friends? Because you don't know. You just enjoy their company, they enjoy yours, you don't fight, you get along, that's great. For most people, that's friends. And I think that, I guess that's still a good word, but it doesn't have that intimacy of you're being real with me and I'm being real with you, and we're open and honest about when we struggle and what we're dealing with, and, you know, okay? That's the kind of friendship that I think, when Yeshua says, I call you friends, now that's the level he's talking about, okay? Because he took that higher than saying, I called you brothers, now I call you friends. Because we have that intimacy where we've shared. Listen, I've got brothers, they don't know nothing about nothing I do because we don't share with each other. We don't have that relationship because we're brothers by birth. Friends is by choice. Okay? You gotta build that relationship. Anything else real quick there? Because we're pushing on 7 o'clock now. Some of you are like, what?
Yeah, we just made this. This will probably be a quick one. From Geraldine Hidalgo in Ephesians 5:2. Is this somewhat connected to Leviticus during the offerings, the sweet smell and fragrance in the grain and peace offerings found in chapter 2 and 3? If so, can you expand?
Look, the bottom line is the phrase sweet smelling fragrance. Just understand that as a metaphor for something that's pleasing to Yah, okay? When you do this, it's pleasing to him. It's not that it smells good, okay? Because when you made the sacrifices, I promise you, it didn't smell good, okay? But it was pleasing to Yahweh. All right, so hopefully that answered that question. Well, listen, I hope that was a blessing. We're going to wrap this up. The children are already in here.